Vertical. And where's my share? Oh my goodness, people. Oh God. Just having a moment here. Things always change.
Okay, we got you.
Caption notes, whiteboards out. Oh my goodness. Whiteboard notes, docs. How bizarre. You would think. I can't. Oh, here it is. Oh gosh. Okay, we're gonna do this. Here's some music. Share screen. Okay. Let's give this a, put it in slideshow. Gonna move you away. Give us a little music. Found you. It's found you to know I must be one of the wonders that. Okay, here we go. I'm letting the people in.
Thank you.
Good day, all. Welcome. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Anna. Welcome all. We have a couple of things we'd love for you to put in chat. It's on the screen and also in chat. If you could let us know your name, your role, and where you are beaming in from. Also, throw in an emoji that illustrates the state of your heart or mind today. We'll wait just a few minutes, one more minute, to see if a few other people will join us, and then we'll get started. Oops. Something is not right here.
You say what I want to. You say talk so all the time. So
Here we go. There we go.
and I said I upset. Now I know that I did something wrong to miss you. I missed you.
Thank you for putting your information in chat. It's helpful.
You said I only hear what I want.
Oh, some people know each other in here. That's always exciting.
To anyone where I don't understand. If you really care, I'm only hearing negative. No, no, no. So I monitor One woman was singing my song. Some is in love and the others run away. Lover is crying cause the other way. Somebody's probably waiting for the other who was stuck. Yeah, they were born well. This is not that big that I'm throwing.
Some more people coming on in. Oh my goodness.
Are you trying to tell me that I'm never be anyhow or anywhere with you? You thought that I was naive and I thought that I was strong. I thought, hey, I believe
Coming in fast and furious now, people.
miss you. Such a
Did I see my friend Allison Haynes just join?
Good morning, Ren.
All right. So good day, all. Very happy to see you. Something is not working with my slide deck here. Welcome to Serving Neurodiverse Youth. My name is Ren Durayo. I use they pronouns. I am the co-director of Temescal Associates and the How Kids Learn Foundation, along with my illustrious friend and co-founder, or originator, not co-founder, founder, Sam Piha. Welcome all. We're thrilled to have you here. As you can see, there are a few questions that we'd love for you to answer in chat. Your name, your role, where you're beaming in from, and an emoji that illustrates the state of your heart or mind today. Okay, it's Thursday, August 14th, planet Earth. Maybe we could all take a deep breath and remember that we have a body. We all have a body. We are going to be talking about serving neurodiverse youth. And I'm thrilled to have with us today Dr. Nikki, who is the director for the Center for Embodied Equity and Neurodiversity at the University of San Diego's School of Leadership and Education Sciences. Can you give a wave, Dr. Nikki? Thank you. And also Mita Sharma Holt, who is the executive director of the Fishing School. Can you give us a wave? Thank you, Mita. So we're talking about neurodiversity. I know that many of us in after-school programs are working with neurodiverse youth. I know personally, I know many programs who have started their own training just based on their experience of what is working with neurodiverse youth. Today, we'll hear a lot of great information and we'll have a conversation together about what you are doing and what's been happening in this world. There are presenters. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Dr. Nikki. I'll stop my share, Dr. Nikki, for you. Good to see all of this, your beautiful faces. And I'll let you kick us off.
Thank you, Ren, for this opportunity. I want to thank the How Kids Learn Foundation for this opportunity to be with all of you today. This is quite a bit of an emotional moment for me, if I can be vulnerable just for a minute. I have been a career educator and a career teacher trainer, but the biggest point of my life in this work, like I would say, like a God-sized mission, if I can be spiritual and bring my whole self to the conversation, has been to bring this training on neurodiversity to the out of school space, the enrichment learning space, and the after school space. And the reason that this is so important to me is because I am the mother of a son with developmental disabilities that our family adopted from foster care system. And if it is not your lived experience as a parent of a neurodiverse child with significant need, then you don't know what it's like for a family to be consistently marginalized throughout a child's entire lifespan, to raise a child that has never been in YMCA, who's never been able to participate on a sports team, who's never stayed away at summer camp, who's never been able to participate in a robotics program at a museum, because all of the people who lead and run those spaces say, sorry, ma'am, we were never trained to quote unquote deal with a child like this. And so my lived experience as a parent of a child with significant neurodiverse diagnosis and needs, as well as a career educator who has given my life and my career work to helping educators and caregivers understand the gifts and the brilliance alongside of the needs of neurodiverse children. This merger today with all of you is super significant to me. And in this moment, I do want to give a big shout out to the Boys and Girls Club of Fontana, because it was when my son was 17 years old was the very first time that we attempted to enroll him in a summer program. And they said, as long as your son doesn't need a one-on-one aid, our staff and our team is prepared to include your son and assure that he'll have a great summer. And so my work here with all of you is just to share even just some small thing that can support you all in creating more inclusive environments for the children and within your communities, and more equipped staff for those of you who are leading and serving in these roles. So with our time together today, I've been asked, as it were, to share the kind of background and the framing of this field of neurodiversity and how it shows up and is relevant to all of you in the after school and out of school time learning space. And then I'll be turning it over to my colleague Mita, who will match my mindset, which is what I'm asking you all to shape. She's going to match it with the skill set of the what do you do and how do you bring this into transformation tomorrow. So I'm an academic at the University of San Diego, clinical professor, and have been charged with building our Center for Embodied Equity and Neurodiversity at USD. This is that picture of my son, Chaz. So he's 19, he just turned 19 last week. So he is the poster, he's not a poster child anymore, he's the poster man for this work that we do. And the reason he's holding this birthday card in this picture that I always like to use when I show my why is because when we adopted him, we were told all the things to never expect him to be able to do. Don't expect him to be able to live independently. Don't expect, and the whole list. But one thing that we were told not to expect was for him to ever learn how to read. And this photo is shown here because on his 13th birthday, Chaz read all of his birthday cards on his own for the very first time. And so I just want to assure all of you that when you bump up against diagnoses and you're presented with reports about all the things children can't do, just remember here that the heart of neurodiversity is to tell you that no human being has the last say on what a human heart and mind and body is capable of. And what I truly believe is that those of you in the after school and out of school spaces, because you operate the informal learning spaces, those tend to be the spaces where neurodiverse children have a greater opportunity to thrive outside of the rigid confines of standard-based learning within the school day. So you have the chance to build communities that can function as medicine for neurodiverse learners and give them a chance to tap into their genius and thrive. And so please never, ever, ever take that ability lightly. So our center at USD is a bit of a different focus than most centers for neurodiversity. Most are built on building skill sets and providing remediations and therapies for marginalized learners or neurodiverse learners. We flip the script on that in our work, and we focus on empowering educators and child serving professionals. Our number one focus is on building capacity for those who serve children, and also primarily supporting mindset shifts. And while we understand that this work is a significant stressor for many when we're dealing with extreme behaviors and exceptional needs and higher needs for child to adult ratios, we also have a big component on the mind-body wellness of care providers and professionals. And so we do use this applied educational neuroscience perspective to help build what we call nervous system capacity and nervous system well-being for the adults who serve this amazing population of young people. So our center has 3 goals around building capacity. First, we're here about transforming mindsets, how we think about neurodiverse learners and the contributions that they make to our learning and living communities. Our second priority is about revolutionizing teaching and learning and expanding access. We believe in building something that we refer to as neuro-inclusive environments, meaning we build environments that are inclusive of all brains and neurotype nervous systems. And then broadly, we are about the business of igniting advocacy for systemic reform, because where many programs are about quote unquote changing or adapting the neurodiverse person to fit the environment, we're about asking environments and the adults who create those environments to take on a major load of the shifting and transformation to create inclusive spaces, living and learning spaces. So our major initiatives are around building facilitator training through our certificate at the university, both for K-12 teachers and for out-of-school time professionals like yourselves. This fall, we're building a life path certificate for neurodiverse college students to help them pick careers and design life opportunities based on their neurotype and strengths. We also offer a higher ed certificate for those who teach in community college and vocational spaces. And then we have a big policy and research agenda in our work. So I was asked to answer a few foundational questions for you all just to set the context around this field and topic of neurodiversity. And then I'll be excited to learn along with you as Mita shares the next day applicability to your work. So many times I'm asked, what does this term mean? And what does it cover? So Judy Singer was the first person to coin this term neurodiversity. While it began in referring in the field of autism, it has now expanded to hold an umbrella of many more diagnoses. And what I really want you all to walk away with as you think about neurodiversity broadly is that we are accepting this term to reflect our recognition of brain variations across the population, expressing with both challenges, which we do acknowledge, but also natural advantages, which are often overlooked and underplayed as we are creating spaces where neurodiverse people can thrive. So our big focus is making sure that we're not spending more time focusing and hyper-focusing on the things that a child is not able to do as we are mining the genius that is within their diagnoses and their innate strengths. So this diagnosis now includes terms like ADHD, SPD means sensory processing disorders, HSPs, highly sensitive persons, PTSD. We do understand trauma and the effects of trauma can produce changes to the nervous system and brain that can also reflect learning disabilities and neurodiverse diagnoses, traumatic brain injuries, as well as dyslexia. One thing that we recognize pretty much consistently in our work, that about almost 80% of the time, if a child or person, individual has a diagnosis around autism, ADHD, or dyslexia, we're also seeing co-occurring diagnoses around anxiety, depression, or other mental health diagnoses. So that's why it's super important that we have mind-body approaches. This is where your practices like mindfulness, but again, trauma-informed is super important, and other socio-emotional learning programs that are trauma-informed always and culturally connected help us meet the holistic complex needs of many of these students and children that we serve. So this issue of prevalence is really important because we're seeing now that approximately around 20% of the global population exhibits some form of neurodivergence. And what I've seen in my work of training teachers, because teachers are my students, I see a significant amount of undiagnosed and untreated neurodivergence in the adults that serve children. And it becomes very important in our work about us as adults understanding how our own brains and nervous systems function, because that determines our attachment style with children. It determines our curriculum style, how we engage and design learning based on what our own nervous systems need, as well as our discipline styles, how much nervous system capacity we have to hold when children are struggling with their own nervous system state. So I've been enjoying very much helping adults explore their own brain. I call it neurotype, as it relates to serving children, particularly those with significant needs. Dyslexia we see in approximately 20% of the population. But an interesting fact here is that in the state of Texas, they conducted research on the prison population. And while we see 20% occurrence of dyslexia in the general population, we see it at about 49% in the prison population. And so what we, in our research, start to look at that is that there is a big push with each time that neurodiverse children are treated as discipline problems rather than given the support that they are needing to remediate or to be held in community, even with those diagnoses. Each act of discipline, of kicking them out of class, of engaging disciplinary measures around the behaviors, pushes those children more and more toward the school to prison pipeline. So at every level of society that we can increase our safety net, the accurate diagnoses and the accurate treatment will really help us turn the tide on these highly intelligent people that are being misrouted because our societal structures are not able to support them properly. So we see this diagnosis around ADHD, around 10.5% of children and about 6% of adults. And we see again that higher percentages of children who meet these diagnoses are having longer wait times for adoption or for kinship care. And so this is a big part of the reason why a lot of our work is directed to supporting people in the foster care community, making sure that foster parents and agencies that serve children in the foster care population have a stronger understanding of neurodiversity, especially also people who work in the juvenile justice system as well. So we see that that care needs to be brought up. So as it relates to our work, I just wanted to take time to dispel a couple of myths that are pretty common in our work. We've just established that neurodiversity does not only mean autism. So it's holding a larger diagnosis and also a lot of overlapping. We see a lot of overlapping of ADHD with autism. So you might hear people refer to ADHD instead of ADHD. So when they say ADHD, they're meaning that there's an overlapping diagnosis of autism with ADHD. Another myth is that you can standardize the care that people need across these diagnoses. And so I always want to make sure that people understand, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. And so it really becomes important as we commit ourselves to this work that we learn and take the time to see children individually in their diagnosis and to learn them to understand what they need. We know that being neurodivergent does not mean lacking intelligence. So some of the greatest minds of our time, inventors, creatives, have neurodiverse diagnoses. And while we do want to provide supports for the challenges they face, we never want to underestimate the capacity that they have to be great inventors, which is why I chose this picture of this group of beautiful children engaging in a robotics activity, because we know that many of our neurodiverse learners are very hyper-focused around high subjects of high interest, and they're able to go very deeply into that work. It's totally a myth that neurodiverse youth can't succeed academically or socially. And we know that these strengths are not rare, that they should be called forward as a high point in their work. Many times I'm asked, how should after-school workers engage with the schools that the children attend? Yes, children have IEPs in their school, but one thing that we find is that, and one thing that I'd like to encourage you all in the after-school space, is to really understand that in education, similarly to our medical models, we have fragmented systems of care. And within these fragmented systems of care, everyone is not speaking to each other to get a collective and holistic understanding of who a child is and what they need in order to thrive in a learning environment or a communal environment. So for example, in our current model, if we have a child with autism and they are expressing stomach issues, then we might send that child to a gastroenterologist who understands the needs that they have physically. And then if they're struggling with behavioral regulation or challenges, when we send them to an ABA therapist who has their own separate knowledge of the practices that are supporting that child with understanding and supporting behavior. And then if a child is struggling with connecting with the group, then having issues with motor skills, we might call them and send an occupational therapist who's able to support OT issues around sensory needs and things like that. But again, that information is not being shared holistically. And then if a child you're wanting to support social skills, then we might call a group play therapist. All of this information isn't always collected and shared holistically. We say, I'm not a specialist in this. One thing that I have found has been very powerful in supporting neurodiverse learners in out-of-school spaces is creating what we call a profile of the child to understand holistically what does this child need across a range of domains, so that those of us who are lay people, meaning I'm not a licensed OT, but what are the foundational basic things that I need to know about this child's sensory needs that can help me create an environment? Because a child is in OT for just 30 minutes once or twice a week, but they're expected to function all the rest of the hours of their day in environments that may be stressing their sensory system. It becomes very important for us to be aware of that. And so in our work at USD at SCENE, we've created what I refer to as a neuro-inclusion framework. And so what I'd like to just walk you through very briefly in the time that I have is it's just things for you to begin to think about. And I'm hoping that they will kind of overlap with some of the strategies that Mita will be sharing with you as you think about a child and what do they need in these 5 domains in order to be able to be supported in your environment. So the first thing, this first quadrant over here is physiological. And as you begin to map the students that you have concerns about that are neurodiverse, the first thing I want you to begin to think about is what are their strengths and challenges and needs around their nervous system state. So for neurodiverse learners, what we understand is that what we call something called low vagal tone is a part of many of these diagnoses, which means lower nervous system flexibility, means it is easier to be stressed into states where behavior regulation is a little more challenging and can sometimes be harder to settle. So here, the physiological pieces become questions around what kind of movement practices does the child need in order to settle their nervous system? What kind of mindfulness practices, breath practices, exercise practices support them in settling their nervous system? Then here in the relational piece, it's important to understand what kind of demand are we placing on the child for social engagement? Direct eye contact can be overwhelming for many children who are neurodiverse. So again, in our work, we begin to map where the child is stronger, where there's a challenge, and what the needs are. And we're making sure everyone on the team that engages with that child can work with that map so that you're better able to distinguish willful misbehavior from the effects of a child being stressed according to their neurotype. And that distinction makes all the difference in the level of compassion that adults are able to have that allow a child to remain included in that physical environment. Environmental. So we want to explore sensory challenges. So for example, the autistic eye can sometimes often see the flickering in fluorescent lights, and that can be a significant stressor on the nervous system. So the question becomes, how are we activating lighting? What about sound? What are the sensory features of the physical environment that could be stressing the child? It's not just that the child doesn't belong in the environment, but how can the environment be modified to support the sensory needs? And we've seen children in our work in some of the not out of school programming in San Diego be able to keep children engaged in entire summer programs just by creating sensory profiles for each neurodiverse child that's in the program and making sure all the staff are aware. Then this next piece, instructional. We know that people who are neurodiverse, particularly around ADHD diagnoses, have challenges with executive functioning. And many times you might teach lessons that have great content, but not always thinking about the executive functioning skills that students need in order to complete that task. So time management, do you use things like countdown timers? Do you use things like graphic organizers in the out of school space to support the executive functioning development needs that those students have? And then finally here, this last quadrant, we map students on this idea of transcendental. How do we tap into children's innate genius? So we know that many children that are neurodiverse, we say, oh, they hyper-focus on only one topic. But how are we creating more what we call open mode? So if I want to put this in here, this is a big thing, and this is a big advantage that you all have in the after school space. You have a great opportunity to support students' open mode thinking. Most school assignments are closed mode thinking. Read this, summarize this, regurgitate this with strict learning protocols that don't give children the opportunity to be out of the box. Don't give them the chance to tap into divergent thinking. Your work and your greatest advantage in the outer school space is not to replicate what's happening for children in the school day, but to create opportunities for them to be inventive, for them to be creative, for them to create alternate endings to stories, for them to have a pile of straws and bricks and things that don't even look like they go together, and to be inventive and create new strategies and new solutions. And when you use your out of school time to allow students to tap in that way, you're tapping into these transcendental strengths that they have. So one thing I want to share on that is that research shows that, and I want to come out of here, research shows that people who are neurodiverse have something that the research refers to as quote unquote excessive theta brainwave activity. Now in the medical research, that would be considered a negative thing. We need to get more quote unquote beta brainwaves so they can focus and regurgitate and memorize and pay attention. But those theta brainwaves that are natural to neurodiverse learners are connected in the science to enhance creativity, enhanced intuition, enhanced creative flexibility and problem solving. And these are the spaces where you have absolute advantage to support these learners. And this is why so many people who are neurodiverse say that it was their time in the Boys and Girls Club, their time in arts programming, their time in sports that saved their life and made all the difference in them becoming the people that they were meant to be. And this is really important because one thing I want to just share with you as I turn the floor over to my colleague, and then I'll enjoy connecting with you all after. Neurodiverse children receive 20 times the negative feedback and criticism of their neurotypical peers. 20 times the amount of negative feedback and criticism. You didn't do this right. Pay attention, sit still, be quiet, right? And so the boxes that constrain really start to shape the mindset and the levels of anxiety that these learners grow up with into adulthood. The spaces that you create have the opportunity to be a buffer of that and a transformer around that. And I look forward to continuing our conversations around the types of professional development that can help us really turn the tide and really enhance your capacity to really be those lifelines and to have communities that function as medicine for our neurodiverse learners.
Amazing, Dr. Nikki. Thank you so much for such an incredible wealth of information. I'm sure that folks here have a lot of questions and things to ask you about. We'll wait until after we hear from Amita. And right now, that's what I'll do. I'll turn it over to Mita.
Well, thank you, Ren and Dr. Nikki. You're a tough act to follow. So everybody stick with me. I am so thrilled to be here with you all today. And interestingly enough, we all did not exchange kind of personal information prior to preparing all of this, but my heart is really full, and thank you for sharing your story, Dr. Nikki. I also wanted to share that I am currently the executive director of a small nonprofit in Washington, D.C. Please send out your good vibes as we are to you, because we are all sharing some similar issues in our environment that are stressing us out. But what I wanted to also share is why, like why am I in this work? So I started my career in the out of school time field. I got smitten by this place that we can create for children that's not home and it's not school. And I got smitten about 35 years ago and developed programs locally and nationally. And one of the things, and then eventually I had my own family, and I have 2 children, both of whom have learning differences. And what really catalyzed my work in this, particularly this work, or trying to get the word out to more of my fellow after school practitioners, is that a couple years ago, my son, who was in a school that was supposed to be set for children with neurodifferences and learning differences, asked him to leave. And he was a 9th grader. And we had to make a really difficult choice to put him into our local public school. We're blessed to be in a space where the schools are fairly good, but I knew they really weren't set up for him. And while that made me incredibly angry as a parent, think sort of thought back a lot more to the children I've been blessed to be able to serve for all of my career, which are not the children who have all of the blessings that I can afford for my children. The children that I think most of us strive to serve, that are from challenging households, challenging neighborhoods, environments that put up challenges in spite of their brilliance. And so I started to think, well, how can out of school time, how can my work that I've dedicated to, how can we create spaces? Because what I will also share with you, and maybe this resonates for you, is that throughout my entire career, I've always been in the spaces where my staff have come and said things like, yeah, I just don't know what to do with this child. Or I've been in groups that say, yeah, we know that there are learning differences, but we're just not set up for that. Or organizations or national or systems that have helped create that said, yeah, but that stuff is just like out of a realm of our experience. I mean, that's just not something that we can handle. And what I want to do today, and I will continue to do, is to kind of challenge these presuppositions. I want to challenge the idea that actually it's not even a choice. It's not really even a choice whether we serve children with learning differences or anywhere on the spectrum of neurodiversity, because they are here with us. And as Dr. Nikki mentioned, the numbers speak for themselves. So the numbers that she's talked about, that I've read about, are those of children that are diagnosed. But we understand about the communities in which we serve, right? And I frankly, if you don't know how to even get a diverse, a diagnosis, it's incredibly challenging to do that. It takes multiple resources, monetary, time, access, all of the things that I know that many of the children that we aim to serve in the families don't have access to. So what I believe is that the numbers are much, much higher. And then finally, I also believe really strongly that we in the out of school time arena have a special opportunity to serve the children. As Dr. Nikki mentioned, that I think that we have a way, because of the way that we are outside of the school system or outside of the home, again, we are that third space. We are that special place. So that is why I think you're all with us today. And that is what I'm hoping to do in my presentation, is say, okay, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully give you some tips to help us think about the next piece. So I love this little girl. Because hopefully she captures what a lot of us are thinking and feeling when we encounter not just children that have particular needs, but just our work is very typical. And so I want to sort of name that we are generally in a space where we're asked to do so much with fewer resources. So I mentioned a little piece about why these things are important. There are many more children in our care who are neurodiverse, who have cognitive differences than we think. And then there are the intersectionality of issues around poverty and challenges and stressors that can exacerbate functioning, whether or not there's a natural diagnosis. So understand that these things are intersections. They're not monolithic. They're not one thing. That we think we're uniquely qualified. It's much simpler to support than we think. We actually already have the setup. I'm going to explain how. But most of us are not intentionally thinking about creating that environment. And that frankly, just learning spaces should be equitable because learning is important for all of us. We want to uplift all of the brilliance of the children we work with. So I want to offer that I think there are many billion, trillion ways in which to do this, but I'm going to try to distill them down into three major buckets. So, staff training and support, looking at your program design and your curriculum, and thinking about your partnerships, especially with families. So, first of all, how do we equip our staff? What I like to say is that we need to start right at the beginning. At the fishing school where I work, and it is, by the way, a 35-year-old nonprofit in the heart of Washington, D.C., and we serve children in Title I schools across the city. We first started by really altering the way that we ask questions in our interview process. So yes, you need to hire as you normally do, but you ask questions about experiences and names. Name the things, name like have they worked with children with learning differences? Offer a scenario perhaps, and ask questions around their openness to change and folks' kind of approach to challenging behaviors. It's really important to consider biases. And just this is a quick thing about what's an implicit bias. So something that we sort of hold that isn't evident, right? Or maybe we don't even realize we have a bias, but people often have this, or an explicit one. People usually in an interview or other situation will not tell you there are biases, but if you can ask open-ended questions, you can kind of get to them. These slides, by the way, will all be shared by Ren after this, so you don't have to take copious notes. And I've put some resources here for you to start to think about. This, for example, is an actually implicit bias reflection tool. You could give this to your finalist in your interview process to kind of get further deep dive. It's not necessarily, I'm not recommending that you sort of automatically kick out folks who don't answer these things perfectly. In fact, I think that most of us, I don't think, I know all of us have implicit biases. So it's about understanding, well, who is this group of people coming in? What kind of training and support might I need? So I recommend including in your regular training. We do it seasonally, obviously, getting ready for our big training in August. And then again, right before summer camp. And then we go over the basics. So I always do a 1.5 hour session. You don't have to do it that way. You could show this video perhaps as your training. And this is a special note I just want to share, and it kind of goes back to Dr. Nikki, which is that many people start to talk about themselves. When I have done these trainings and I've done them across the country, people start talking about themselves. And I think it's really important to sort of do a pause and make sure that this conversation is about the children we're about to be blessed to serve. So provide the one-on-one, the definitions as Dr. Nikki provided, the facts about why this is important and the prevalence of children with neurodiversity, characteristics, etc. why inclusivity matters, right? This idea of equity versus equality. Why does it even matter? The program quality assessment out of the Weichert Center actually also centers these sort of ideas about creating spaces that are learning, that encourage learning for all learners. Think about confidentiality. This is super important, as I'm going to get into in a minute. When we ask families about their information, you as an organization, you as a program director, if you are, or your leader, you need to set up a system of confidentiality of records and be really clear that this information is shared with each other for the purposes of bettering the environment, not for gossip and not anything like that. It's really important. You start with relationships. Make sure that, if nothing else, staff always know that they need to help create a culture of inclusivity, that they are the front line to family relationships and to school relationships. And then you can go into some of the top techniques, and I'll go over some of those in a minute. So they include things like emotion regulation, time management, and consistency and routine. I think it's important that your training is not a one and done. I'm not suggesting you're doing that, but I'm going to reinforce, if you are, that that is the right course, that you say it again, that every time you have an opportunity that you bring in the conversation about what might be happening for individual children. How might you adjust what's happening? I also really think it's important to create the opportunities for venting and a forum for reflection. We ask our staff to do a huge amount. We don't pay them very much. They often have multiple jobs. It's a lot. And so I think it's okay for folks to have a safe space where they can come back and say to you, yeah, I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. I don't know if I can deal with this kid. All right, let's start there, and then let's calm ourselves, use our same breathing techniques, and then think about what might happen. And then finally, I think it's really vital that we create that forum, not only for venting, but also for opportunity for adjustment. If you are open to the changes the staff are offering, then they will be more likely to buy into those changes. Number 2, program design. So again, I can't reinforce enough the idea about creating a norm in your organization, in your group, about what is equity all about. I know there's a lot of conversation in certain circles about this word, but it comes down to just about shifting things so that individuals have what they need to thrive. That's all. It's not anything more complicated. And so it's important to establish that as a culture in your organization so that your staff, your team, your organization then carries that forward in the way that they design and equip children future. There are a lot of pieces in the next couple slides that you might want to jot down. Again, you're going to get these slides later, but these are just some, if we want to start with just self-emotional regulation, these are just some ways in which you can easily, low cost or no cost, infuse these into your programs. One of the other things that's not here, but I really recommend is if you know that your children need something different, if they need literally just a way to have a breather, then create that. Create a space where it's okay if a child needs to get up, walk around, and just be walking around, or disengage. I just had this really wonderful group leader this past year. When I went to visit the classroom, she, showed me this child who just would like never engage, but he would always be reading a book. He would never engage the activities. And I think she thought, as I'm the executive director, that I would be really upset. And I said, you're doing the exact right thing by just letting him be. Not every child in the entire classroom needs to engage in everything in the same way. So let them be, if that's what they need. Let them have time for reflecting. And on that, please don't demand that everything is written in a journal, right? Scribble, scrabble, doodling, etc. are great ways to allow a child to express themselves in the way that they know how. Executive functioning. Now, I know Dr. Nikki went over this a little bit, but I like to think of this as the way in which a brain helps you go from an idea to an action. and all of the steps it takes in those neurons and dendrons to make that happen. And there are some easy things that you already do, like board games, playing red light, green light, that already help with executive function, already help somebody kind of regulate themselves, understand step 1, 2, and 3, and practice that over and over and over. Visuals are going to be your friend. So I recommend visuals, whether they are to show the schedule for the day, the tasks that are going up. I remember my very first experience as a group leader way back when in the South Bronx. I knew that I had different levels of readers in my group. And so we had a chart that always had both the words and graphics, like a little icon that could show what we're doing next. So, we would have snacks, so I'd show food, etc. Time. So if there are certain times or you have a project and you're done with time or you need to do that, certainly visuals are great. Nowadays, there are so many visuals that if you have a smart board in your classroom, you could show those. I've one quick tip on that is if you are using your phone as a timer, I really don't recommend using the like alarm blasting tone as the reminder that time is up. I find that incredibly overstimulating for many children. And I think it just creates kind of an angry, aggressive kind of tone. And I don't think it's needed. A quiet, beautiful tone works just as well. Consistent structure. I cannot overemphasize that whatever you put in place, that you have the team that can do it over and over and over in the same way, which means you're going to need to make sure that if there is a substitute or a new staff, that everyone understands the structure and that they're doing it in the same way. There are often a part of executive functioning is to lean into preferred tasks, but that doesn't always mean that you can offer those tasks that are preferred, but maybe you can offer incentives. Again, these don't have to, and I don't recommend monetary incentives, of course, but maybe a point system. And just like Dr. Nikki mentioned, my preference is that you incentivize positive and sound behavior and not negatives. So that if you're putting check marks up on a wall or on a board, that you're putting them up for the behavior you want to see. That seems to be a non-starter, like a no-brainer, but I can't even tell you how many times I've seen the opposite happen in classrooms. And so taking a minute to reinforce that. Front loading with visuals. So this means helping somebody know that they're going to be transitioning to the next thing, which means that they then need to maybe see a clock counting down rather than just saying it's time's up, or have some have a prompt that says, okay, everyone, pointing to a visual that says, okay, so the next thing we're going to do is basketball. So we're going to need to wrap up what you're doing and maybe show a visual of what the chairs need to look like as they're all put up the way you need them to be, rather than just saying, put up the chairs. And that's what I mean by clear description and direction. So often folks really need a visual. They need to see what is, like Brene Brown, if you know her, she's a researcher, says, paint done for me. So what does it look like when it's done? When you say clean up the papers, what does that look like? You can't assume that everybody understands that. So have a visual, take a photo of what the classroom should look like, and then show that somehow. And then allow for natural consequences. If things are not done and they're not all set up, that's something that can be a learning opportunity for later. Scaffolding. So this is an idea that, again, I could take a lot more time to explain, and I know Dr. Nikki probably has some strategies there. But basically, you're putting all of these things into place with the hope that eventually that becomes part of the individual's toolbox and they can pull on it by themselves. But the point I want to make here is that you don't kind of get to decide when the scaffolding should be done. It's done when the child shows that they themselves can take on some of these tasks on their own. The time frames are completely individual, They can vary because of other stressors that you have no control over and the child has no control over. So scaffolding is the thing where I like to say these days that the old ways of thinking about developmental stages and what's appropriate at what time should really be challenged, because we know that there are so many individual factors that have a child aligned to those things or do not. Grouping. So this is something that we do in after school all the time. And the only point I want to make here is that nobody tells you you don't have to have all second graders in a group. You don't. You can group children in any way you want to. Again, the power of after school. You are not held by the date of manufacture. So I actually think that group by interest or by need or mixing groups in sort of the way that Montessori does, it can be a tremendous benefit for children. You don't have to do this at the beginning either. I have often, as I've gone into the program year, started to realize, oh, this child really would be better with the fourth grade, or this child would do really well, even if they are in fourth grade, with the first graders as a leader, because that works well for everyone. Structure. So flexible learning spaces, more time for transition, consistency, again, I'm saying that again, having opportunities for a space that's soft, maybe without a lot of some sensory overload, would always be helpful. Offering choices. These kind of things are the opportunities for flexibility that out of school time excels at and is as a breath of fresh air for a child at 3 o'clock or 3:45 when they are exhausted from the rest of their day. Homework time. So I'm not going to go over all of these, but again, I'm going to reinforce that visuals and structure and incentives can be really important. Also can be things like scribing. Scribing just literally means, hey, can I write that down for you? You could have another child do that for a child if you've set up that culture of equity. Partnering. So again, these are multiple ways that you can create interventions for folks that are struggling with organization. So visuals, having clear directions, etc., using other tools like calculators and things like that. There are a lot more strategies I can go into, but I don't want to take all of our time, but I want to reinforce the scaffolding, letting go over time, and also clear description and direction. Last thing, parents, schools. I should have started there. Maybe I should start there. I don't know. These are chickens and eggs. I think that family engagement is paramount. And I know it's an area that I know we at our organization and many of you probably struggle with. I think that it's really important to start at enrollment. So when you are at your enrollment tabling, where you may be doing that in the next couple of weeks, or maybe you've done it already, when you're sending out your first informational info or flyer or something, make sure that it's really clear about that you will be asking questions. You will want to know all about the child and that will help you serve them better. And that's the reason to ask the questions. And then also when if a caregiver actually shares that they have a child who's neurodiverse or needs other things, ask them if they prefer a one-on-one phone call and have continuous communication once information is disclosed. But I know that the big challenge is that information is sort of not disclosed. I know that because we have FERPA or Family Education Rights and Privacy Act releases that we have with the schools that every family can opt into signing in our enrollment form. That then gives me opportunity that even if a family doesn't share, it allows me opportunity to just get a list of children in my care, in our program's care, that maybe have IEPs or 504s. And from that, I can then talk with school day teachers or the administrators and find out what did they do to help this child along. Ideally, you get that information from your families, but you may not. My recommendations on your forms is that you ask about children's strengths first, not just where they're lacking or what their special needs are. that you ask in different ways. So we ask probably 2 or 3 different times, different ways in our form. We ask in the medical section. We ask in the learning section. We ask again about anything else you want to tell me about your child, so that there are plenty of opportunities if a family or a parent is sort of feeling challenged about disclosing for reasonable reasons. Maybe they can tell you in another way, and perhaps in a question around what might be triggers for the child, or what are the best ways to get your child attention, or those kind of things. But these are really important pieces. And then finally, as I sort of alluded to, engaging the school day staff. So if you have the FERPA release, and if you don't have it, you can always get it later. You can approach a family or a caregiver and say, hey, having some, wanting some more information about how best to support your child, would it be okay for me to talk to their school day teacher? And that can be a separate form, and they can give you that release. But even if they don't, I still recommend that after school professionals have some way of communicating with school day staff if they can. In one of my webinars that I did, I had somebody come in and showed and helped me understand that they have they use like a Google sheet with a school day staff that they can just like kind of fill in quickly information about what happened for that child that day. Or we use kind of a mailbox in the teacher's lounge. That's just the after school. We're the fishing school after school mailbox. It has paper right there, a pencil attached, and if there's a letter or a note that they need to tell our team or our site manager before the day starts, it's easy for them to do so. I think it's, if you can, as a program director or manager, especially, try to sit in, try to go to the teacher meetings, try to observe the children in their school day environment to pick up on processes or structure or strategies that they're using. Remember, school days have resources that we don't in the after school. So learn from them, maybe sit in on their trainings as well, if they allow you. Include students. This is my last couple things. So we can't forget that students know what they need. Ask them, pull them aside and say, hey, I see that this is hard for you. What would make it easier? What if they can articulate it? It's so much more helpful if you can create that with them. If they can't articulate it, maybe try different things and then go back and say, well, you can do this. This is special for you. Consistency is the key. Sorry about the blurry slide. And I have a few additional resources that I like to go to for additional information on how to support children. But I know between Dr. Nikki probably has a million as well. And then this is just my information if you are interested in ever getting a hold of me. And I think what we want to do now is we've given you a ton of info and we've talked at you for a while. We'd love to open up the floor for your questions. And Ren, please let us know where we are on time.
Okay, thank you so much. We have lots of time. So now is an opportunity for you to join in, ask your questions. I will say one of the things that kept coming to me when you were talking, Mita, was the fact that so many of our after-school programs are in the cafeteria. And the cafeteria is so loud. And the atmosphere is so cold. So do you have any recommendations about that?
So it's interesting you say that. It's actually, I wrote a blog article around all of this kind of to start my little journey on this information. And it came from my remembering a little boy named Edwin. When I worked in New York City, and I was in a big cafetorium where often we are, right? And it had cinder block walls and tile floors and big fluorescent lighting. And didn't know any of this stuff back then. And I think I just trial and error kind of tried to figure out what worked for him. I think that my recommendation is first and foremost again, this sort of goes back to if you can know that there are sensory issues for a child, or if you can know any of that in advance, obviously it's better so that when the child comes in, maybe there are maybe soft spaces or a different space for some children who kind of need a quieter, loungy or low light kind of space. Maybe you can set that up. I also think that there is this phenomena, and I don't know how many of you experience of just not just children who have the special needs, but just all children are exhausted at that point of day. And so I just wonder whether, and this, I'm not pretending to say that sort of something that we want to shape a standardized thing, but perhaps we need to think in advance about what's happening for children as a whole. So maybe we do convert those spaces. Like if you can fix one thing, fix one thing. If you can fix the lighting, I would say start there. I don't know how to fix the sound necessarily, except that if you can fix that there is soft music playing, it often lowers the sort of general sound in the environment. But I'd open it up to others who have good strategies as well.
Thank you so much. So, what are y'all thinking out there? What are you doing? What experiences are you having? What questions do we have for Dr. Nikki and Mita? You can just open up your mic. We're about, looks like about almost 40 people in here, so I think we can manage that. If you have a question or a comment, come on off mic.
Hi, thank you so much, both of you guys, for the great information that you're sharing. I know you did ask Mita, we were talking about how important it is to talk to families about, what are those needs that we need to support a child. And in our program, we always talk about how can we make a child successful in the program. But sometimes I think a lot of our families are afraid to disclose like what kind of support they would need, because I think they're afraid that they won't get accepted, quote unquote, into the program. So we don't find out a child has an IEP until something happens in program, and then we have to have a parent meeting. And so how would you suggest, I know those are great questions and suggestions that you had, Mita, on how to, in an application, how to ask those questions. But what would you suggest in order for us to continue having that open dialogue and for parents to feel comfortable to share, like, they'll need, more breaks, or they'll need, maybe a quiet corner in the classroom if we have a classroom, and, if we have cafeteria, what can we do to support, to have our children successful in the program? What are the suggestions that you have to have that conversation early on? Because, we've had those conversations, especially when we don't have access to that one-on-one. And sometimes having the conversation with parents, the parents then they say like, oh, you know what, this is not going to be a conducive program for my child because it's a 1-to-20 ratio, for, let's say. But we want to make sure that we're supporting and educating also the families to let them know this is what our program's all about. Is this what can we do to help? But if it's not, how can we support your child?
Yeah, I would open that up to others too. I think there are some comments. First of all, I think we need to share that not every program is for every child. That is the case. We need to admit that we have very, very few resources in the after school. I wish we had more, and I do believe strongly that we can adapt things for most every learner. In my career in out of school time, I can probably count how many children I've asked to leave on one hand, because I will make staff really, really angry before I'll make that decision. But what we have put in place though is it's like a multi-step thing. So first of all, in your staff training, in your development, make sure they understand that relationships are really important with the families just as much as children. And if there are opportunities for your staff to get to know the families, so much the better, because they'll more likely trust later on. Secondly, in the form, I mentioned several things in the form, but if you're still not getting in the information and they've not given you a release, then I think it's about making sure there's also a tiered system in your program where there are like immediate conversations after the first thing, but also really positive conversations. So you're not only talking to children's families when something goes wrong. So how do you put that system in place where maybe there's like, we used to have kind of a pink note, and the pink note was a positive, like a great thing that happened today. And the note can go a checkout and just be there. You don't have to have a conversation, and that sort of warms the families up. I think it's just about, I don't know, Dr. Nikki, you might have a note on this as well, but I think that lots of families are often in denial and feeling shame themselves about their child's behavior. And so you face that resistance when you try to have the conversation. But if you have never built up a positive relationship or a relationship that's about positive behavior, it's really less likely that they're going to want to see you as a resource. So I don't have a technical answer. I have a relational one.
Thank you.
So America, some things that the after school programs that we have supported have put in place is asking proactively for all families in the application, just what things, what is the way that your child is settles when they are stressed? What kind of sensory challenges? So we're familiar with 5 senses, right? So sight, touch, taste, sound, smell. But we also have proprioception, which is my sense of myself and my muscles and where I am in space. Vestibular, what is my sense of balance? So my child does well turning upside down. Or so, for example, we know that clockwise spinning in the northern hemisphere activates the vagus nerve, which helps turn on the calming part of our nervous system. So when we see children spinning, we tend to say stop, right? And so now knowing that, oh, that's that child's innate self-soothing technique, then the adults will know, please don't make them stop. If they're spinning, that's their way of settling themselves. So these kind of simple things that parents can proactively let us know about, and then all staff can be informed. When it's not just asking, do you have an IEP? Do you have a 504? But just asking more broadly across like those 5 areas that I showed in that holistic profile. Like we create a profile for all learners. I have found in the after school programs, parents were excited to help the educators know who their child was and what they needed. And by the end of the program that we helped, the science program in San Diego, they were able to move through the summer program, and not one child was asked to leave the program because they felt that they couldn't meet their needs. And then to the previous point, we just can't have everybody in the auditorium or in the cafeteria, right? So then it was a separate space in the library. So again, it's helping within a school site find those alternate spaces and organizing staff with the intention of being inclusive, that everyone will not be able to function well in spaces that have a lot of low tone noise and a lot of echo that will be dysregulating for many nervous systems. And some of the adults that I find can't handle it themselves. So if you match adults who need a quieter or more settled space with the children who can do better in that space, then we can reduce the retention rate, improve the retention rates of our adult staff, because adults' nervous systems are highly wired in these spaces too, because we all don't know enough about our neurotypes and our nervous system capacity. And that's the biggest point. Ms. Vega here asked a question earlier about staff training. The way that we approach this work is helping adults understand from the perspective of applied educational neuroscience, how does my brain and nervous system function? What is my own nervous system capacity within myself? What triggers me? What stresses me? What soothes me? And then how does that in alignment with the work that I do with children? And how is it my best work inhibited when I can't control the environments around myself as an adult? And the other thing that I'm very proud about in that piece is that we've had a lot of educators on the verge of burnout and quitting the field be able to be retained in the field and continue to support within the special ed community and the inclusive community, because they now are not burnt out. So we can say, yes, the focus is on the child, but what I have learned in this work is that inclusive environments are run based on the nervous system capacity of the adults who are creating those environments. And so we can't take ourselves out of the equation about our own nervous system care and our capacity to co-regulate, which is to lend our settled nervous system to children when they are off kilter. It is the absolute foundation of inclusive environments. And that's the part that's been underserved, and that's the part we focus on in our work at USD. It is the absolute first skill that we teach in building inclusive environments is adult nervous system capacity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nikki. Monique, would you like to come off mute and ask your question? If not, I can read it.
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to pick your guys' brains about some advice. If a district or a program in particular is resistant to serving students with disabilities for whatever reasons, they're saying maybe the student needs a one-on-one aid, maybe they don't. Funding for that aid, staff isn't trained, etc. They're throwing, the gambit at you. What is the first step that you would take to change that? Or where would you go from there?
Monique, this is Ren. Are you asking what we can do to change the district's resistance or a program's resistance, or both?
Either one, because I've come across in my career both.
Yeah.
And I know what I've done in the past. I am now trying to help the sector in California understand how to do this, being that ELOP program, Expanded Learning Opportunities, is now for TK, and in legislation it states that it's for all students. So I'm trying to help folks move this along when I don't want them to be excluding certain students from this 9-hour day that they have access to. So I'm just trying to get some advice on, what is the first step that what would you do to help support them through either understanding? Do we start, I don't want to start cold and start quoting law. I mean, where, just your professional opinion, where would we start?
Okay, you could start with either program or district, but I imagine there are different strategies for each.
True, very true. So let's do district. The harder one.
The harder one, but I'm not a legal expert in these matters. However, I think that you can assert, an IEP or a 504 is not, it can be adjusted, and it can include after school. So if a child needs some of the same accommodations, there doesn't have to be in the school day, that I know. Also, I think there are legal, recourses, but it's not something I think I would do without the family involved. If you have particular families that you're thinking about, they would have to probably assert some of that, and you would then have to advocate on their behalf. So I don't know if Dr. Nikki, you have better strategies there.
So a lot of my work is done at the district level. And our curriculum, the Heart-Centered Connections, is a 36-hour certificate that earns CEUs. And we don't bring the work into a school or a district unless the superintendent and the cabinet and the leaders of that district also participate. And I would say, Monique, one thing that we have found, again, with the mindset shift, is that when we present the case and the needs of neurodiversity from the perspective of applied educational neuroscience, that it gets the attention of leaders in ways that legal things don't, moralistic things don't. But when we understand this is how the human brain and nervous system function under stress, and when it's supported, helping them understand this concept of neuroplasticity. And I don't mean to throw you all a lot of science terms out of context, but a lot of people still hold this kind of fixed mindset about human brains and human capacity, that 0 to 5, brain development is done. And if you don't have it by then, that's all you're going to be able to do. The way we approach the work in our certificate programs, we're helping people understand neuroplasticity is showing us the brain can consistently rewire it, and new neurons and new connections can be made throughout the lifespan with new consistent experiences. And so when we're teaching the mind-body practices that support that, and when they start to see the behavior shift, so we are like documenting in our work. I have a couple colleagues that I've worked with here from La Mesa Spring Valley schools who I see are on the line now. And in one of our schools where we did this work with the whole school, by the end of that year of the training, and we saw a 37% reduction in teachers' office referrals for behavior. So what that means for us is that as teachers build this capacity and this awareness, how do I distinguish willful misbehavior from the symptom of a diagnosis? That is a critical distinction that people need to be taught to make, because a lot of times we're getting escalated in our work with children, assuming you meant to spill that milk, you meant to hit your friend. And therefore that mindset we have about the behavior shapes how we react to the child, which then escalates. We co-escalate the children's behaviors rather than co-regulating. So when we can show, and we've seen that consistently in our work across districts. I'm getting on an airplane tonight to go start a new school district in San Jose. We've done a lot of work already in Berryessa Union schools, that when the teachers have this understanding that's rooted in educational neuroscience, when they're able to understand how the brain and nervous system of neurodiverse people work, how to distinguish it from willful behavior and defiance, the teacher's lens change. We see reductions in office referrals. We see reductions in suspensions. We see reductions in children being excluded from out-of-school programming. And we see reductions in special ed referrals because the teachers have more capacity and more skills to serve those children. Now, when that starts to bring down costs for schools, and we see less burnout from teachers, so we see less teachers leaving the field, all of that turns into cost savings for school districts and for school sites. And unfortunately, sometimes it's those financial motivators or other things that are going to drive people to start making those changes. And so I would just say, having that neuroscience foundation starts those conversations. And when people start to slowly see the changes starting in one school site or one classroom, the ripple effect of that grows the buy-in to the program over time. So I would just encourage you, Monique, my philosophy in this work is we're increasing neuro-inclusion one nervous system at a time. And so as you can show that the practices and policies that you put in place support a small group of children, you keep scaling that up little by little, documenting it. So if you counting the number of instances. So here we go, we're tracking, I'm training my teachers to track decreases in the frequency, severity, and duration of the challenging behaviors. So we're tracking, when I'm applying these interventions, are there decreases in how often the dysregulating behaviors occur, how severe they are when they happen? So it used to be like at a level 10, and now they only go to like a level 5 in severity. Frequency, it used to happen 5 times a day that they would fall out or have to be removed with extra support, but now it only happens once a week. And then duration is how long does it last? It used to last for like 35 minutes, but now the upsets last about 5 minutes and the child is building the tools to bounce back and recover quickly. So just those types of tracking over time and then seeing that happen with larger numbers of students at a time has absolutely started to get the attention of administrators to then expand the application of these types of interventions. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, absolutely helpful. Completely heard and understood. Thank you, Dr. Nikki, and also Nita. Really appreciate you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
There's another question from COY Expanded Learning. I don't know if you'd like to come off mic or off mute and ask your question, or we can read. There you go.
Yeah, sure. Hi, we're from the city of Yucaipa. I have our program coordinator here, our 2 specialists that support sites, and then I supervise the program. So we have our whole admin team of our expanded learning program here. So we had a 2-parter question. So number 1, how can we improve the staff morale towards supporting these students? What we notice is some of them get really burnt out over time, and it seems like their patience with some of these kiddos really decreases. And our second question is, how do we create the culture or the approach where they're really pulling from a toolkit or framework to support these students? Because a lot of our staff are looking for direct answers. Like they want to know if a child elopes or if they leave the group and they start throwing items. What do I do in this situation? And so despite all of the training and efforts that we continuously are providing them to better support these students, a lot of them freeze in the moment and they're looking for that direct answer. And so we want to know, how can we shift that mindset to being more of a toolkit or framework approach rather than, oh, when this happens, I do this to support the students.
Great, thank you so much. So that is a two-parter. So let's start with the first one, which is how do we shift mindsets of our very overworked line staff folks?
I mean, I can start, so I like the idea that you mentioned mindset, because it really starts there, which is why I advocate for a differently worded interview process and protocol, because you get to get a sense of how adaptable are these people that you're about to hire. So, but once you've hired them, then it sounds like you have a number of training pieces in place. And that's where I point to the one strategy I mentioned, which is around creating the space for venting and for solutions, so that it won't be that I don't know that you can provide a standard toolkit. Honestly, I think you can provide a multiple of strategies and things in place, but you don't know which children you'll get and how they'll react at any given time. And so you need the malleability, the flexibility of your team to be able to adapt for the child's sake. One of the things I do when I start a training is I ask them, when I start like a seasonal with new folks, is I ask them, why are they there? And, to a person, I don't think I've ever heard people say, oh, because I want to, only take care of the kids who are easy to take care of. And I think it's the mindset is around, if your mindset is that I want to just be here and be about the content, about like delivering, making sure like the art project gets done or the sports thing gets done, then that's not the right mindset. If your mindset, or if you can help your folks understand that you are there to facilitate a child's growth and development, whatever that looks like for the day, it is a very different approach. So that's one. And I think toolkit wise, you can offer some of the things maybe that I offered, or maybe we can point you to some other resources. But the last thing I want to share is that if you create that forum for staff, then you will start to hear that maybe the thing that you are putting in place, like say the number of transitions in the day, or the spaces that you have to work with, or the kind of content that, we all say to our funders, we're going to develop and then deliver, and then realistically it doesn't happen. If you can hear that if you can hear it less as just complaints by your staff, but more like they're trying to think this through, then I think you can come together and alter things. So we've done things put in place, like we have 1 hour or 1 hour and 10-minute sessions, because there were too many transitions in the day and 15 minutes wasn't enough. And that was, you would spend like the next half hour calming kids down in the next piece. So little shifts like that can help. The ideas that Dr. Nikki mentioned around like the space that you have, or in some cases, we actually don't have transitions, so that once they get to a room, they just stay there, and we bring the food maybe to them, and then we bring the activities, and we do all of that in one space because it's too crazy. So I think it's about, the mindset is like who you hire. Do you have a culture in your space about equity first? Or do you have a culture around product? Because then that's a conflict. And then thirdly, there are some toolkit things you can do, but you can also rely on the brilliance of your staff. to come up with solutions that work, but you have to be flexible to try those things out.
Thank you.
What I would say is that in our experience of the work, and Amita touched on this, many times as educators and as adults, as caregivers, as parents, we are not aware of the degree to which we are the responsible antecedent for the behaviors that we're seeing with children. And I would say that one of the things that I'm most proud of and excited about in our work is, again, as we are considering environmental stressors and shifting the environment, rather than saying, well, they're just going to have to learn how to settle regardless of all the noises around them. The more we understand that, how long is my lesson lasting? Should it be shorter? How long have I expected the children to sit still without movement? How many children did I put in a space? How much choice did I give to children to be involved in the activity with a partner or to do it alone? So many things, like, for example, when I'm visiting classrooms with teachers, and we understand dyslexic children and their needs, how prevalent they are in the classroom, I am still today in 2025 walking into classrooms where teachers are being told it's good educational practice to have random call aloud readings in class in order to be sure that children are paying attention. And so teachers are, not to say innocently, but they're, engaging in educational practices that they've been taught is best practice and that they're expected to do. But you have to understand that for a dyslexic child who has a lot of pride, it's preferable for them to engage a survival instinct, to throw a chair or to hit someone, to get kicked out of class, to save their face for not being put on the spot and embarrassed by their friends of not being able to read when they're called out randomly. So that whole incident could have been avoided. We co-escalated rather than co-regulated with the practices that we're employing in that moment. And so for our friends from UKIPA, I would just ask, and this is what I train my teachers to do when they take our program, put on the nervous system shoes of the child that is in question with the behaviors and experience the learning environment from their nervous system's perspective. Which things are happening in the environment that would be stressing them into mobilized or shut down states due to the environment, due to the instructional strategies that are being used, due to the relational things that are going on. So like Tamita's point, when there's bias in the space, and again, to the point that I raised earlier, how neurodiverse children on average experience 20 times the amount of negative communication and feedback as a neurotypical child. I have a child that just keeps going back to the pencil sharpener and they're like, you're just trying to get out of your lesson. Why are you out of your seat? So there's automatically an assumption of malevolence and an assumption of willful misbehavior. Then when I ask the teacher, watch the child without your comment, then they see the child is pressing so hard because there's actually an OT issue that's breaking the pencil lead. And so the child is trying to do the assignment, but he's got to keep going back to sharpen the pencil. And rather than saying, why are you keep going back to sharpen your pencil? There's a, why are you out of your seat? And you're just trying to, and now you've co-escalated and started an argument with the child. And now you've got an eloper, or now you've got a chair being thrown or someone being hit. So there's so much that we can direct at children. But what I have found is that when we engage processes that help adults, again, from a neuroscience perspective, analyze themselves and analyze the children's natural responses as a function of their diagnoses, that accurate perception of what's going on in the classroom changes how we're relating to children, and it changes the outcomes that we see, even when no direct intervention is being focused on the child. And I know it sounds too good to be true, but we see it reducing the behaviors like 70%. And it's not going to be for every child. I'm not presenting a Pollyanna perspective that every child with the most extreme behavior is going to be able to be captured and supported. But if we could increase the net to serve 75% of our neurodiverse children, that would be a whole lot and something to absolutely celebrate.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Nikki. And I also just want to underscore the doing the, I'm calling it a worksheet, but doing the assessment that you showed us the framework of all of each of the children in your program, sitting down together as a staff team and going through the strengths in all of the domains that you outlined, I think is really critical in supporting staff people in understanding, like just broadening their perspective of like, oh, if we know this child has these strengths, or if we can build on this, we can perhaps support them better.
And we can get in front of the behaviors. So we know, okay, the volume is going up. I know that Sammy is about to be stressed. Let's move him. Let's bring the energy down, you know. And so these things of getting toward the antecedents, get to the thing that happened before the behaviors. And that's what that kind of framework can let us do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments out there in the group? What have you seen work in terms of supporting the mindset of staff, or supporting staff who are really on the edge because they're overwhelmed and are having to manage big behaviors?
I work with prime time, and we may or may not be understaffed in our particular like school, but our primary way of dealing with disruptive behaviors seems to be take the kid out of program and put them somewhere. Does that actually work, or is there a better way of addressing the maybe underlying issues or underlying like things that these particular like a particular student is maybe dealing with and may or may not be in their IEP if they have one?
Thanks, Chris. Mita or Nikki?
Mita, could I defer to you for this?
Sure. I mean, I feel like I'm going back to the previous person and talking about we do need a bunch of things in our toolbox. And I think what we keep talking about today is, who are the children? Do we know what their needs are? And also, my big drumbeat is, do you have a culture of equity? Does everybody buy in that equity is important? I think we float that word around a lot, and I don't think everybody completely agrees that adapting things for individual learners is actually our job. It's not the other way around. And so if you can establish that culture from the beginning, then there is a mutual understanding that actually, I think the other thing I've been wanting to say is that it's not really all up to the group leader or the facilitator, the instructor, whatever you call them, to manage all the behaviors. If you have a group of children that all understand that we kind of work on things together and that we are here together, often you can enlist another child to go be with that person, show kindness, to have empathy, to, scribe for them if they're not able to write something down. But it doesn't work if there's a specter of shame around in an individual needing something different than another person. And then the other piece is around, I really push people in our field. We are asked by funders to do so much. In fact, we are actually asked to lift up grades, which the previous 8 hours couldn't do. And it's unreasonable. So I would push you all to kind of think about how much you're asking your team members to deliver. Is it reasonable, given what Dr. Nikki and I are trying to establish is that these children are not anomalies. They're actually more than norm, more and more, not only because folks have diagnoses, but also because of all of the other stressors that our children are holding. That's just for their natural functioning of children, even if not diagnosed, is shifting. And so we actually need to probably do less and have more time for just sort of being empathetic and kind with each other. So sure, having the child leave can be great. It can be great. It can give them a little release valve. Having the child be able to have agency and say to the group leader, I need to go do this, is even better, because now the child has been able to name something that they need. Or having a child be able to literally just like roam around in the classroom, they're not bothering anybody. I don't see why that's a terrible thing. So it's like, it's your perspective of what that might be, of what might be happening. But you can't address that if you don't have the sort of surrounding culture.
Mita, I really appreciate you uplifting again this notion of equity. And, you know, one of the other things that we can do is talk about our brains and nervous systems with young people and how our brains and nervous systems all work differently and how we need to support each other, that we're going to be a place where we support each other in co-regulating, you might not want to use that word, but in supporting each other in managing how we are reacting. And that's going to look different depending on each individual. And that's really, you know, upholding the equity. And young people will absolutely respond to, oh, we have different ways of experiencing the world. And yes, I can help you. I can help you do this, right? So to rely on the young people themselves as well.
So that's what the teachers who do our certificate program are trained to do. They teach the children their brain and nervous system states, and then which mind-body practices support them in resetting their nervous systems. So the children are empowered to name where their nervous system is on a scale, if they're feeling lethargic and shut down, if they're feeling highly mobilized and stressed. And then they have Velcro sticky notes backed on to different practices, and they're able to build a practice that the community does together. So then your mindfulness work and your nervous system regulation work becomes something the community does together to help settle a nervous system, and it's not a punishment that one child is told, go sit in the corner and breathe until you get it together and then you can come back. Then we begin weaponizing mindfulness. We're weaponizing mindfulness practices as like punishments, versus again, where the community can function as medicine and you build those mind-body practices in. Another thing, Chris, that we have and that our teachers implement, in one of our autism classrooms, the teacher has a tent, and this is for middle schoolers, like 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. It's a tent when they have sensory overwhelm. The child is empowered to say, I need to step out, I need some time in the tent. And then she'll say, how long do you need? I don't know why this particular child, he likes 7 minutes, specifically 7 minutes, but he is empowered to set the timer for 7 minutes, go into the tent and relax, no questions asked. And he comes back out and is reset and ready to re-engage with the community. No statement is made about it. It's not called out. No one else is drawing attention to it. And again, it has reduced by 80% the amount of time that that teacher has to call for external behavior support to come in and help manage a behavior challenge with this child. So we have to think differently about voice, choice, and agency for children, giving them permission to name what they are feeling, have strategies to support moving that energy out of the body. Again, a lot of times when children are experiencing big behaviors, especially mobilized behaviors, we say, sit down and breathe and calm down. But if you understand the neuroscience and the somatics around stress, we understand that the cells and tissues and muscles of the body are still holding a big charge from that stress energy. So physical movement, tapping, stomping, drumming, dancing, which is a lot of what we're taking away from children. We're taking away then the video game culture is also reducing the amount of physical movement. We're taking away the monkey bars and the spinners and all the things that really supported vestibular reset for the nervous system out of a caution of safety. We're removing all the things that help from a somatic perspective to shift nervous system state. So, and I am not a licensed mental health therapist. I am a trauma-informed educator. So with all due respect, from trauma-informed somatic work, we understand talk is incomplete therapy. And so many times we're trying to talk children out to rationalize out with their mind and their voices why they're behaving the way they are or why they're doing the things that they're doing, but we're not attending to the physiology of the stress response, which requires a very different approach with a lot less words. So we have to get back to supporting the physical body. And so I'm highly recommending that you all have specifically trauma-informed mind, body, nervous system practices that are a part of your program that help children manage and discharge the stress that they've endured all day long in the classroom, and now being asked to come back into your program for several more hours of behavior and cooperation and self-regulation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a few minutes left. Is there anything else you would like to ask or just comment on? That was some jamming music. Thank you.
We don't have any questions, but from the city of Ukaipa, we just truly want to say thank you. This was a really great webinar to be a part of, and so we thank you all for hosting and the great information we learned today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with all of you.
Okay, Mita just threw there in chat, box breathing. Use it to begin your after school day every day in every site. Box breathing.
This is about the consistency. So like just creating so again, I really agree with Dr. Nikki, which is that one of the things I experience a lot is in doing this training, a lot of the staff and the team members start to think about their own self, their own regulation, their own functioning. And for many, I've found it's sort of heartwarming, but it's sort of heartbreaking. I found, folks that are understanding for the first time why they themselves do what they do or react the way they do. And these are folks who are ostensibly adults. And so the box breathing, I've put that into place in our programming for the children, but actually for the staff as well. Just to have everybody acknowledge that we're sort of transitioning from a whole school day, maybe a whole other work day, and now we're going to be together. And in order for the staff to be fully present, they need to have an opportunity to sort of regulate their emotions as well, and so that they can give of themselves fully. So that's a kind of a requirement, and it's free, and you can do that anywhere. And I wanted to, and so I don't recommend a lot of manipulative or tools necessarily to encourage all of the sort of say calming down or conversations or regulation, because you may not have them on the soccer field if you're out there, you might not have it in another space. So if you can, I also think attention getters should not have equipment. They should be something that's free and available on your body at all times. So I just wanted to share that little tidbit, and it's really making a huge difference in our programming. Kids are now taking that with them, and they now when I go in and I can kind of test, children will come and teach me box breathing, which is amazing.
Yes, fantastic. We also had that experience with a mindfulness curriculum that we brought into schools, and we always held a parent or caregiver event in the middle of that program. And all of the parents, grandparents would come in and say, "Where's my bell? I need a bell. My child is telling to me to stop and take a breath. You seem like you're angry, Mom. Why don't you take a deep breath?" So it's really beautiful how the practices become integrated and shared with the whole family. Box breathing, for anybody who doesn't know, is taking a breath in for 4 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, holding it for 4 counts, and releasing for 4 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, holding for 4 counts, and doing that over and over again for a minute or so, however long. All right, well, if there are no other comments or questions, I'm just going to share a few other things with you before we head off today. We have a paper, which is an overview of neurodiversity. If anybody is interested in checking that out. On the 17th of September, we will be having a webinar on the importance of play. If you are interested in joining us for that, we'd love to see you back. And lastly, of course, we have a YouTube channel where all of the webinars are posted. You just look up How Kids Learn, and there you will see many, many videos of the work that How Kids Learn has done over the years. Just a reminder, I'm going to stop that share. Just a reminder that we will send out copies of the presentation and a link to the recording of this webinar. I want to offer my, oh, thank you so much, Dr. Nikki. Dr. Nikki just put in chat a paper, that paper. I want to express my deepest gratitude to Dr. Nikki and Mita for sharing their wisdom. I see it out there. It's true. We're all neurodiverse. Let's just look at it that way and begin creating environments that support us all. I'm wishing you a beautiful rest of your day, and it's almost Friday. So we get to rest and relax and take care of our nervous systems over the weekend.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Allison.
Good to see you, Allison.
Oh, you're friends with Dr. Nikki too, huh?
I know all the great people. I love y'all. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you for being with us. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Good to see all of you as well. Well done, Mita. Good job, Ren. You got it going on.
Thank you, Allison.
Dr. Nikki, I hope to reconnect very soon.
Yes, hope to see you. Be well. Good to see you here.
See y'all.
Dr. Nikki and Mita, if you could send me a PDF of your presentation.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. And Dr. Nikki, I'd love to connect with you offline.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank
Sorry for the difficulty getting you in.
Oh, yes, that's
I'm
fine.
glad you made it.
I'm glad too, and I hope I was able to download that PDF. I'll check in a minute and see about that. But yes, thank you all so much.
You're very welcome.
I'll send it to you in an email, Chris.
Okay, I appreciate that. Right.
Yep,
Thanks.
you bet.
Got it. So I'm just going to compose here. Ren.
Thank you.
Mita is at sharmaholt.com. That's your?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
That's right.
Hi, Sam. Nice to see you. Okay. Fantastic. Oh my gosh. Dr. Nikki, I didn't realize all of the work that you were doing there in San Diego.
I have no idea.
Unbelievable.
Oh,
And it's, can people get the certificate? Is that an in-person course or do you do it online?
So I put information. I didn't want to like turn the time into a sales pitch, but I put the explanation of the certificate and the dates and how it flows and a QR code if people want to go forward and learn more. Because right now I am training other facilitators to lead the certificate work through our grant from the San Diego Foundation, but it's hybrid. When I'm delivering it. So the upcoming one that's in the handouts that I've given you, everyone comes to San Diego for a 2-day retreat. And then the remainder of the program is virtual online. And then they earn a certificate and units if they choose to buy the unit separately from the University of San Diego. when I'm training facilitators, it's because they will be the ones in-house in their district continuing to spread the work throughout the district. Like today, Clara and Jen were on because I'm currently training them to continue spreading the work throughout their school district. And then they break it up as they're able, because different districts have different amount of staff days and substitute teacher issues. So like next week, tonight I'm going to Campbell, so I'll be in San Jose doing like a full district introduction, and then they can put forward people they want to become strategy keepers, and doing the same thing in Carmel Unified next week. So I'm getting out of the business of doing the first level certificate because it's too much travel for me, and now I'm training the people who are certified by their districts and agencies. And then San Diego Foundation just funded us to give scholarships to their community-based organizations and out-of-school providers, because they realize they've been giving money to build after-school programs that are marginalizing and turning away neurodiverse learners. So now they're requiring them to get this training as a condition of accepting their grant money.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic
That's the dream.
news.
Yeah, so we're training out-of-school providers to be facilitators of this work because they know the unique context of that, and then they will be the ones now spreading the certificate in their context. Yeah, so I love the work. I hope it wasn't too abstract and theoretical, but it really is a lot to think about, because you see the conversations keep coming back to mindset,
Yes.
even more than the direct strategies.
Yes.
And that's why we can't shift mindset without the neuroscience, because people will try to wiggle their way out of believing anything until they go, oh, that's how the brain and nervous system is wired. Okay, oh, the MRI scans show these things change. And then people start to make a space for thinking about things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So exciting.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I hope you got what you wanted out of the.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Great to meet you all. Thank you
It was a
again.
pleasure to meet you. I look forward to being connected. Are you on LinkedIn, Mita?
Oh, yes. I'll
Okay.
send you.
Very good. Take care, Rin. Have a
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.